Hello everyone, welcome to The Rundown. Thanks to AGL for all your energy needs. Go to agl.com.au. Our final episode for season 2019. Thank you for your feedback, positive, negative and all things in between. It's been a lot of fun and you've been watching it in your droves. A lot of discussion from last week, and the biggest pushback we received from all of you on our social media platforms has been replace Andrew Embley for one more time. So we've done so. We've brought Paddy Sweeney in from 9 News. He's joined by our regular Ryan Daniels from 7. No Andrew Embley. We're relieved with that, but he's been very inconsistent.
Probably the most inconsistent performer of the year, I would have said. He's been up, he's been down, he's belted a few tables. The table's very happy that he's not here, and we're very happy to have Paddy Sweeney.
I'd like to say I'm back by popular demand. I don't think that's the case, but I'll take it.
All right, let's get our teeth into it. And let's, because we have to, reflect on last week. It really was an aberration, but an untimely aberration by the West Coast Eagles to lose to Hawthorn.
Yeah, I think everyone's always wary of Clarko, and he showed why. Because the man he's a genius. And I know Adam Simpson said it wasn't about strategy, and to a point that was correct, but he also did some clever things. Sean Burgoyne playing forward was a real trouble for them. Ben McAvoy playing back for a second week, looked like he played there his whole career. But as Adam Simpson said, energy, effort, they weren't there. I spoke to Willie Rioli earlier this week, and he said he knew within the first 5 minutes that they were in trouble. And obviously it was 19-0, so they were in trouble. But they never quite came back from that, never quite turned it around. And the other issue, which I want to talk about later when it comes to selection, is backline chemistry.
Yeah, they lacked a bit of intensity, didn't it? It just wasn't West Coast that we've come to expect this year. And I think they got exposed. The Ben McAvoy matchup was an absolute masterclass from Clarko. And I just think it seems as though more teams are putting more time into West Coast defence and how to expose them, especially in Barris and Gov. And I think those two players have got a massive role to play in the next month if they want to go deep. Okay,
so in summary then, they've finished outside the top 4. We know that's difficult. Adelaide 1998, long time ago that's happened. And the Western Bulldogs, of course. But can we ask about, can they win it from here? Is it as simple as they can win it? Can they win their first final and then they're on the road for 3 games in a row? Tough.
It's not impossible. I think what we've learned in the last 3 years is that anything can happen. It really actually can. What is it? Don't believe in never. That's actually working for the AFL because it's so true. And the Bulldogs, while they are a Victorian-based team, they did have to come over here. They did have to go and play GWS up in Sydney. So they did have to travel a little bit in that run. So it's not impossible. But for me, it's more the form. If they had stormed into 5th, won their last couple of games, beaten Richmond at the G, beaten Hawthorn to finish 5th, I'd say, geez, they've got the momentum. But what we didn't see is the momentum.
They're not out of form, Ryan. They're not out of form. They had one bad game.
They played very poor against Hawthorn, and then they had one fantastic quarter against Richmond, and then just held strong. And we've talked about how fantastic that game was. But they're definitely not one of the form teams of the competition. There's no way you could say that.
Who is?
The Western Bulldogs, Richmond.
And
I would put Collingwood in that. I would say Collingwood's in better form than West Coast. I would say Brisbane's in better form than West Coast, even coming off a loss. So they're not in that top 2 or 3 teams in terms of momentum and form. I'm not saying they're not one of the best in the comp. They are. But at this time of year, as we've seen the last 3 years, momentum matters.
Yeah, I think with West Coast, they look like a top 4 side all year, potentially top 2. Slip out of that top 5. I wonder what it does mentally for them, knowing that they've got at least the last 3 weeks on the road if they get through Essendon. I'm just wondering if that might just be a bridge too far. At this time of the year when you've travelled every second week to then go to potentially Melbourne, Brisbane or Melbourne again and then Melbourne again, backing that up deep. There's unquestionable they've got the talent to do so. They've got eight A-graders off the bat. But I just wonder now if they're going to hit that snag, if it becomes a bridge too far. The big draw card that they've got, though, is Nick Nat. If he can come in, that'll lift them, no doubt.
You're just ignoring the form.
No, I'm not ignoring the form, but I genuinely believe they will lap this up. I genuinely believe they realise they've now made it difficult for themselves, but I genuinely believe that if you were the opposition and you knew West Coast were coming to your camp to play, that enormous pressure goes on the Brisbane, Richmond, Collingwood, Western Bulldogs. You'd hate to be playing West Coast beyond the first week of the final.
So you think they will win it?
They can win it. Absolutely. Yeah. Will they win it? Not so sure.
Can win the flag?
Absolutely they
can.
From
5th?
Absolutely they can. There's nothing to suggest they can't. They had one real bad game where they were off. I reckon that's fixable. Plenty of the footy. There were reasons for it. And Hawthorn were up and about. And you talked about how good Clarkson was. West Coast will be prepared. Everyone will be prepared for West Coast. I would not be writing them off. They are very good. Very good. And I think they've been very good for the best part of the year. And I agree. They had top 2. But the competition got better in the last month. The best teams got better in the last month.
They did.
So that's why it becomes difficult. But I don't see a premiership winner in the top 8. take out.
I was going to say, that's difficult.
Someone's got to win it.
Take out. So what I'm saying is, I see 7 teams that can win it. Essendon's the only one that can't. So they've got a free hit. What changes then? You talk about Nick Nat. I saw Will Schofield, Brendan Archie and Jared Cameron last week in the Waffle. Schofield's performance down back was exceptional and Archie broke the lines and kicked 4 goals. Unlikely he'll break in, but tell you what, it's nice to have guys in form.
Yeah, it is. To me, there's going to be no room for Archie. He's the unlucky guy every week, and hopefully at some point we get to see him play at the top level. I think they have to make 2 changes. I think Will Schofield absolutely has to play. I mean, we're almost the Will Schofield fan club on this show because we've talked about so much how he unlocks what Jeremy McGovern and Tom Barras can do. And we've seen Tom, in particular, his form in the last couple of weeks hasn't been his best. He's had a fantastic season. He's a fantastic young player. But at the moment, he's just not himself. I think bringing in someone like Schofield can just unlock a bit of that. And obviously, if Nick Nat's available, you have to play him. And when I looked at the teams, I thought, geez, someone's got to come out of this team. And they're very unlucky. For me, if you're going to bring Schofield in, you have to drop a defender. So for me, that's going to be Jackson Nelson. I know he's been playing a little bit mid, a little bit back, but you're just going to have to move maybe Duggan into that role. And then I think to bring Natanui in, unfortunately, you're probably going to have to lose Jake Waterman. And it was him or Petruccelli. But I just think Petruccelli's pace is more important than what Waterman can deliver. And unfortunately for Waterman, he's done nothing wrong.
Yeah, Waterman was pretty good last week. He had 20 touches and 11 marks. Not bad. I think he might be the one if Nick Nat comes back in. The other one that I was thinking, Jack Petruccelli, I was thinking just about his form. He looks like he's just getting a little bit long in the tooth, I guess, as the season progresses. I wonder if Jared Cameron, they bite the bullet and think, hey, this kid's got X factor, he's got speed, he's got skill. Do we go with someone like him? I agree with the Will Schofield. I just wonder. I really like what Jackson Nelson's been able to do in the second half of the year. He's finally found some continuity with his form. I think Liam Duggan will be looked at a little bit. I just think his last sort of 6 to 8 weeks has been really interrupted by that ankle. He's lacked getting that match fitness. He came back for their game in the Waffle, got injured again, came back, and he just had a couple of moments last week which were unlike
interestingly, they submitted to have him play in the Waffle this weekend and got knocked back, which meant that they were thinking about playing him, which means that there's a chance that he's not playing on Thursday.
And you can't back up after a Sunday Waffle into a Thursday AFL game, so
very
it's not going to happen. Okay, so what areas then can the West Coast Eagles exploit Essendon, knowing that Essendon also have some injury concerns?
Look, they've got some issues of their own, Essendon. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's quite amazing that they're in the finals after some of the runs that they've had. I reckon their midfield's a bit one-paced. They're really good inside. Zach Merritt's a fantastic player, and Dylan Shields had a good season, a pretty good season. But I just think that they're missing a couple of different elements to the midfield, and also their forward line is wildly inconsistent. Jake Stringer might be the most inconsistent player in the competition. When he's on, he is very, very good. But that's where Will Schofield comes in. I think he would do a fantastic job on a Jake Stringer. And I think you're relying on guys like Mitch Brown and McKernan and these guys who aren't top shelf players. They might have a good game once every month, but they're not going to deliver week after week. So I think that's where Essendon maybe fall down. And also, as I said, that one-pace midfield.
I think the midfield is, as Ryan said, I think when you have no David Zaharakis and I think, and also Dyson Heppel sore as well, I think they lack that little bit of depth there. But the one for mine is in attack West Coast can expose. If they get the supply, they will make a mockery of Essendon's defence because Michael Hurley looks like he won't get up with that shoulder. That means that Cale Hooker has to play there. Essendon don't have that flexibility of swinging him forward and providing a target for Tom Barras and also Jeremy McGovern. So I think if West Coast can win the midfield battle and get the supply, I think West Coast will easily kick a winning score.
Do we take anything into account that Essendon were here recently and did a pretty good job on Fremantle, or did they get Fremantle on a tough day?
We take into account that, and we take into account the reason they might win is pace off the half-back line. And we've seen McKenna, who's just emerged as a real player in the second half of the season. And obviously, they've also got Adam Sard, and they've also got Tip and Woody, who plays predominantly forward but loves to stream up and down that wing. And when he's up and going, they look super, super dangerous. So that's what they did against Fremantle. They really exposed that half-back run. So for West Coast, that's going to be crucial. And you talked about Cameron, Petruccelli, those small forwards. They really have to man up on those guys. That's how Essendon win the game if they do win the game.
Two things on that. You win the midfield battle, you can slow down Essendon going forward. Therefore, the Eagles' defence won't get exposed. The other one is that the Eagles are far better skill-wise than the Dockers, and the Dockers that night were horrible in turnovers.
Yeah, I think West Coast will be winning easy. Now, I preempted, of course, the next question for you, and that is, can West Coast create some history for themselves, obviously, outside the top 4 and go on? I genuinely believe they can. They're going to have everything go their way. Nat Nui's going to have an imprint on the finals campaign, and I think they need Darling and Kennedy to refire again. They can't be inconsistent. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're going to need a Kennedy game. They're going to need, like he did against Collingwood last year, they're going to need one of those halves where he kicks 4 and just tears the game apart. And that might be against Essendon. It might be if they win the following week at the MCG against either Collingwood or Geelong. It's a hard road because when you start to map it out, let's say they beat Essendon, they've got to go then play Collingwood or Geelong at the G. Let's say they win that game. Then it's either Brisbane at the Gabba or Richmond at the MCG. Let's say they win that game. They've got to come home again and go back to the MCG and play another really good side.
They don't care about that.
It's just...
They don't care about it.
I know what you're saying. They don't care about all that. No. But the history suggests that it's almost impossible. No, it is impossible to do it from this position being a West Australian side. It's never happened before. So if they do it, fantastic. It's going to create history. We're going to look back and go, you know what? That was an amazing year. It might be even more impressive than last year's premiership if they can pull it off.
Absolutely.
But I need to see it before I can believe it.
Yeah, the interesting one is the week off. I'm not much of a fan before finals, but I think this year, more than ever, it's going to actually benefit West Coast. You look at Nick Nat coming back. The other one is Shannon Hearn with that hamstring injury. So it's come at the perfect time for the skipper because even last week, for the first time, I reckon, this whole year, he looked a little bit reluctant pulling the trigger on some big kicks, and usually his kicking efficiency is sort of just that sets the tone for his game. He is brilliant like that. So
they're big hamstrings too.
Yeah, they are huge. And he's had a couple of little soft tissue niggles in the second half, so that's not great. But it will be interesting to see if Nick Nat does get up, because if he does, he had so much energy and sort of, I guess, just that X factor to West Coast that is an unknown. You can't measure it either. So
Best West Coast Eagles individual performance coming to a finals campaign. Question today, and this will get everyone busy on social media. Let us know your thoughts. The best individual West Coast Eagles finals performance over their history. Now, this is a massive question. It requires plenty of research. Do you have one, Paddy Sweeney?
Gee, I've got about 8.
Do you have one, Embers? Do you have one?
1 times 8. Well, it's easy to go to all the Norm Smith medalists, isn't it? I mean, they're great performances in the grand final. I've got it down to 3. Dom Sheet's performances in last year's final series as a whole, phenomenal. Everyone talks about the grand final. He had 34, kicked that goal. Brilliant. He had 27 touches in those 2 previous finals. He was the replacement for Andrew Gaff, so plenty of pressure coming on, playing for his spot, set up his career. The other 2, I like to go back in time a little bit. 1994, Peter Sumich kicked 10 goals in the 3 finals, including 4 in the grand final. A wonderful performance, much maligned player as well. The one that I think's underrated a little bit though, back in the day when it wasn't a lot about possessions, Tony Evans in 1992, he had 20 touches and kicked 3 goals. They were getting smashed early in that first half by Geelong. He kicked 2 just before half-time, calmed everyone at West Coast Eagles. They went in down by a couple of goals. And from then on, apparently the vibe was, hey, they've thrown their best shot, we're all good. And that created history. So I think Tony Evans, the left-footer midfielder, I love him.
Far too much research. Ryan.
Yeah, Tony Evans, and 20 and 3 would be like, 35 and 8.
Exactly.
So fantastic player, Tony Evans. For me, I looked at it as who has played in multiple finals and played well in multiple finals. And Luke Shuey's a Norm Smith medalist, one of the best grand finals we've seen last year, if you just look at champion data's points. He also was best on ground in a prelim in 2015 that got him into that granny against Hawthorn. And he also won them a final after the siren against Port Adelaide. Those are 3 pretty monstrous performances. So for me, he made the shortlist. I had Peter Sumich in there too because he also kicked 6 in another grand final. He was a fantastic finals player. Stood up on the big stage, as you say. Everyone was bashing him back then, but he continuously stood up in big games. And you can't go past Peter Matera. Arguably the most important performance in West Coast Eagles history in 1992, those 5 goals off the wing. And that wasn't his only good finals performance. He had multiple games where he stacked up. So they've played 52 finals. There's plenty to choose from. But for me, I'm going to go Shuey just because of those 3 separate major performances.
Okay. Well, okay, so you know where this is going, don't you? I'll give you 100 guesses and you won't get mine because...
Murray Newman?
No. Big Red. Big Ash Hansen preliminary final 2006. 11 marks, a couple of late goals against Adelaide. They
the
came
siren
from behind.
did go before he kicked that last goal though.
Came from behind. The job, I thought when when you talk about players in that time, they talk about the most valued players, and you talk to the Judd, Cousins, Embley era. We'd speak to Embers, but he's not here, of course, again. But we would talk about who are the most important players through that era, and they say Hansen and also Rowan Jones. They talk about repeatedly, and I thought it was a chance for Hansen on the big stage to get up. They had that dominant last quarter where they probably could have kicked 12 goals. I think they kicked 5-9 or something ridiculous. He was outstanding, 11 marks. He's just was such a key component to that team, and I thought that win itself, of course, got him into the grand final. So I'm going to give it to Ash Hansen because it's an easy one to take the midfielders, and I'll present it with the big key forward, the big bluey Hansen. Nice work by you. All right, margin, Thursday night, our last one. Last question. I'll give you a quick one. Can they win the margin? Where do they finish going forward? And who is the club champion? Because this is our last chance, boys.
Okay. I think they beat Essendon by 3 goals.
3 goals, Essendon.
Essendon are going to give them a real shake. I think they'll make a prelim, and they'll probably lose that prelim, as they'll be playing at the Gabba or the MCG against Richmond.
Club champion?
Brad Shepherd. It's my pick at the start of the year, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
And I think it's going to be right.
It was.
I agree with Brad Shepherd. I think they can play a prelim as well. They're going to smash the Bombers. I think this will be 6 to 7 goals easily. I think they'll blow them off the park in the first half. I don't know that Shannon Hearn or Nick Natanui will play either. So that'll be interesting. I actually think it would be better if Nick Natanui didn't play and then they rest him for the last 3 if they were to get that far. But I think the Eagles will do a number on the Bombers. I really do. I think Essendon have limped in. They're sore. They're lacking a bit of depth with injuries. I think they're right for the taking.
Okay, well, nice work by you.
Hold on a minute. No, tip for you.
Yeah, no. West Coast will win. They'll beat Essendon. They'll win the flag, and I think Elliot.
Oh! I thought Embers wasn't here.
Yeah.
Embers, I've just got your script. Thank you very much for that. Hey, well done, Ryan. Fantastic all year. Been a lot of fun, mate.
Thank
and
you, Josh.
You've been outstanding. And I know the feedback's been strong and vocal from the opposition and from the even from the West Coast Eagles fans. But you've always stuck firm. You've got great knowledge of the game. Paddy, thanks for coming off the bench. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Goss.
Channel 7's Ryan Daniels. Channel 9's, of course, Paddy Sweeney and Tim Gossage here. Thank you for your company. It's been a wonderful time this year. Thanks to all the hard-working crew here at ECU and also the West Coast Eagles Media Department. And again, thank you to AGL for their sponsorship. For AGL, go to all your energy needs, go to agl.com.au. This has been The Rundown.